Hello and welcome. Today, I'll be whispering to you about the epic battles of the ancient world, where civilizations clashed, heroes emerged, and the course of history was forever altered. These weren't just wars over land or wealth, they were struggles for power, honor, and survival, shaping the destiny of entire empires. From the legendary siege of Troy, where myth and reality intertwined, to the mighty clash of Greek and Persian forces at Marathon and Thermopylae, each conflict holds tales of bravery and strategy. We'll journey through Alexander the Great's conquest of Persia, Hannibal's brilliant tactics against Rome, and the rise of the Roman Empire at the Battle of Actium. As we dive into these 10 iconic battles, let your mind wander back through the centuries, to times when warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, kings led armies into the fray, and history was written in the dust and blood of the battlefield. Relax, listen closely, and let these whispered tales transport you to the heart of the ancient world's greatest conflicts. The Trojan War, the legendary siege, and the tale of the Trojan horse. Long ago, in an age where myth and reality intertwined, there was a powerful city called Troy, located near the shores of what we now know as modern Turkey. Troy was a magnificent city, surrounded by towering walls and ruled by the wise King Priam. But the tale of the Trojan War isn't simply about a city, it's about fate, honor, and the actions that would shape the stories of countless generations. Our story begins with a divine dispute at the wedding of Peleus, a mortal king, and the sea goddess Thetis. All gods were invited, except Eris, the goddess of discord. Angered, she threw a golden apple inscribed to the fairest into the crowd. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed the title, sparking a rivalry only worsened by Zeus's decision to involve Paris, a Trojan prince known for his beauty, in judging the fairest goddess. After each goddess promised Paris gifts of power, wisdom, and love, he chose Aphrodite, who promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, Queen of Sparta. This single choice would set the stage for a monumental conflict. Paris journeyed to Sparta, where he met Helen, wife of King Menelaus. Under the influence of Aphrodite, Helen fell in love with Paris and left her home, journeying with him back to Troy. When Menelaus discovered his wife was gone, he called upon the Greek kings to honor their alliances and retrieve Helen. Thus, a massive army assembled, led by the mighty King Agamemnon of Mycenae. Legendary heroes like Achilles, Odysseus, and Ajax joined the expedition, setting sail with one purpose, to reclaim Helen and uphold their honor. The Greeks arrived at the shores of Troy, marking the beginning of a 10-year siege. The war saw fierce battles and heroic deeds. One of the central figures was Achilles, the Greek warrior unmatched in strength and skill. However, Achilles was not immune to the conflict among his own allies. When Agamemnon seized Achilles' prize, Briseis, a deep rift emerged. Achilles, furious, withdrew from the fight, and without him, the Greek forces faltered. The Trojans, led by the noble prince Hector, held strong. Hector became Troy's greatest champion, defending his people with unmatched bravery. But fate intervened once more. Achilles returned to battle after the death of his close friend Patroclus, who had worn Achilles' armor and been killed by Hector in a mistaken identity. Consumed by grief and rage, Achilles sought revenge, ultimately facing Hector in a climactic duel outside Troy's walls. Achilles emerged victorious, but the cost was great. Hector's death left Troy vulnerable and Priam heartbroken. Achilles' rage and grief were tempered by an unexpected moment of compassion when Priam bravely entered the Greek camp to beg for his son's body. Moved by Priam's plea, Achilles returned Hector's body, a rare moment of respect amid the bitter war. As the siege stretched on, the Greeks devised a cunning plan. Odysseus, known for his wit, proposed the creation of a large wooden horse, hollowed to conceal soldiers within. The Greeks pretended to retreat, leaving the horse as an offering to the gods. The Trojans, believing the war had ended, brought the horse into the city as a symbol of their victory. But under the cover of night, Greek soldiers emerged from within, opening the gates to their comrades. Troy was overtaken, and the city that had withstood a decade of siege finally fell. The Trojan War was more than a conflict over a single woman. It was a clash of pride, love, and vengeance, with the gods watching and sometimes meddling in human affairs. Achilles, Paris, Hector, and Helen became legendary figures, immortalized in stories that have survived through centuries. The fall of Troy symbolized the triumph of cunning over strength and marked the end of an era. Through this war, the Greeks achieved their goal, but at an immense cost. Heroes were lost, families torn apart, and a city that once stood proud was reduced to ashes. Yet the stories of bravery, love, and fate that emerged from the Trojan War live on, a whispered tale from the distant past. The Battle of Marathon, Greek defiance against the Persian Empire. In the year 490 BCE, a pivotal confrontation unfolded on the plains of Marathon, a battle that would become a defining moment in Greek history. This was no ordinary clash. It was a moment where the independence of a fledgling democratic society was pitted against the vast empire of Persia. The Battle of Marathon would come to symbolize not only military strategy and bravery, but also the resilience of a people willing to fight for their way of life. The conflict began with the ambitions of Darius I, the ruler of the Persian Empire. Having expanded his territory eastward into parts of Asia and northward into Europe, Darius set his sights on the Greek city-states to the west. Persia was already the most powerful empire of its time, ruling over many cultures and lands, but Darius had additional motives beyond conquest. The Athenians had recently supported an uprising against Persian rule in the Ionian region, a group of Greek cities on the coast of Asia Minor. Darius was determined to punish Athens for its interference and establish Persia's dominance over the independent-minded Greeks. In the summer of 490 BCE, the Persian forces set sail, led by generals Datis and Artaphernes, intending to land near the small coastal town of Marathon, just 40 kilometers northeast of Athens. The Persian army, numbering between 20,000 and 30,000 soldiers, arrived on the shores of Greece, prepared to subdue Athens and bring it under Persian control. The Athenians, recognizing the threat, sent out an urgent call for assistance, hoping other city-states would come to their aid. However, apart from a small force from Plataea, no other allies answered. This left Athens largely alone, facing a mighty Persian force with only about 10,000 hoplites, Greek citizen soldiers armed with spears and shields. The Athenians placed their faith in Miltiades, an experienced general known for his understanding of Persian tactics. Miltiades knew that a direct confrontation would be challenging, as the Persians outnumbered the Greeks by a considerable margin. Yet he also knew that the Persians were less familiar with the Greek style of close combat, particularly the hoplite phalanx formation, a dense line of heavily armed soldiers fighting side by side. Using this to his advantage, Miltiades crafted a bold strategy that would later be regarded as a brilliant tactical maneuver. On the morning of the battle, the Greek forces took up positions on the plains of Marathon. Miltiades arranged his troops in an unusual formation, with a thinner center and reinforced flanks. His plan was to draw the Persian forces into the center, where the Greeks would appear weaker, and then surround them from the sides, using the stronger flanks to create a pincer movement. This maneuver, though risky, was designed to counter the Persians' numerical superiority and maximize the effectiveness of the Greek phalanx. As the Persians advanced, the Greeks charged across the battlefield, covering the distance quickly to minimize the effect of Persian archers. This surprised the Persian commanders, who hadn't expected the Greeks to take such an aggressive approach. When the armies clashed, the Greek flanks held firm and began to encircle the Persian forces as planned. The battle quickly descended into chaos for the Persians, who found themselves trapped and unable to retreat effectively. Overwhelmed by the discipline and ferocity of the Greek hoplites, many Persian soldiers were killed or forced to flee back to their ships. By the end of the battle, the Greeks had achieved a decisive victory. Estimates suggest that around 6,400 Persian soldiers were killed, compared to only 192 Greek casualties. It was a staggering success that shocked the Persians and inspired the Greeks. The Athenians, despite being outnumbered, had defended their land against one of the most powerful armies of the time. One of the most enduring legends associated with the Battle of Marathon is the story of Pheidippides, a messenger sent to carry news of the victory to Athens. According to tradition, Pheidippides ran the entire distance from Marathon to Athens, nearly 40 kilometers, without stopping. Upon reaching Athens, he is said to have announced, "Rejoice, we have won," before collapsing from exhaustion. This legendary run became the inspiration for the modern marathon race, symbolizing endurance, perseverance, and the spirit of victory. The Battle of Marathon was far more than a simple military engagement. For the Greeks, it was a source of immense pride and a symbol of their ability to stand against a much larger power. It demonstrated that they could not only defend their independence but also outwit a mighty empire with tactical ingenuity and courage. The victory at Marathon resonated throughout the Greek world, strengthening the idea of a shared Greek identity and setting the stage for future confrontations with Persia. In the years that followed, Marathon became a rallying cry for the Greeks, reminding them of what could be achieved when they united against a common foe. This battle was just the beginning of a series of conflicts that would unfold between Greece and Persia, but it laid the foundation for Greek resistance. The Athenians and their allies had shown that they were prepared to defend their freedom, no matter the odds, a spirit that would inspire generations to come. The Battle of Thermopylae, the legendary stand of the 300 Spartans. The Battle of Thermopylae, fought in 480 BCE, is one of the most celebrated last stands in history. It wasn't simply a clash between armies. It was a powerful symbol of defiance, courage, and sacrifice. This battle saw a small alliance of Greek city-states, led by King Leonidas of Sparta, stand against the overwhelming might of the Persian Empire under King Xerxes. Thermopylae became a story that would inspire countless generations, a moment when a few stood against many in defense of their homeland and ideals. After the Persians' defeat at the Battle of Marathon, Xerxes, the son of King Darius, was determined to conquer Greece and avenge his father's defeat. By 480 BCE, he had assembled one of the largest armies the world had ever seen, reportedly numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Xerxes crossed into Greece by constructing a bridge of boats across the Hellespont, a feat that symbolized the sheer scale of his ambitions. As the Persian forces advanced southward, Greek city-states faced an existential choice: submit to Persian rule or resist, knowing full well the odds were against them. Despite their usual rivalries, several Greek city-states came together to defend their lands, creating a united front against the Persian threat. Thermopylae, a narrow pass in central Greece between the mountains and the sea, was chosen as the ideal location for the Greeks to make a stand. The narrowness of the pass meant that the Persians would be unable to fully utilize their vast numbers. Leonidas, the Spartan king, led a small force of approximately 7,000 Greek soldiers to Thermopylae, including his own elite guard of 300 Spartans. The Spartans were renowned for their military discipline, training, and unbreakable courage. They knew they were likely marching to their deaths, but they embraced the mission with resolve, understanding the symbolic value of their stand for all of Greece. When the Persians arrived, Xerxes was confident that his numbers alone would ensure a swift victory. He sent a messenger to the Greeks, demanding their surrender. According to legend, the Spartans responded with defiance. When told that the Persian archers were so numerous that their arrows would darken the sky, one Spartan warrior famously replied, "Then we shall fight in the shade." Xerxes, enraged by their resistance, ordered his forces to attack, initiating the 3-day battle that would forever mark Thermopylae in history. The first waves of Persian soldiers charged through the narrow pass, only to be met with an impenetrable wall of Greek shields and spears. The hoplites, particularly the Spartans, held their ground with unparalleled discipline, repelling wave after wave of Persian soldiers. The Greek phalanx formation allowed them to neutralize the Persian advantage in numbers, as only a few Persian soldiers could engage in the confined space at a time. By the end of the first day, the Persians had made no progress, sustaining heavy casualties against the steadfast Greek defenders. On the second day, Xerxes sent his elite force, the Immortals, to break the Greek line. The Immortals were the best soldiers Persia had to offer, yet even they found themselves struggling against the disciplined and determined Greek defenders. Again, the Greeks held their ground, inflicting heavy losses on the Persian forces. The narrow pass acted as a force equalizer, rendering the Persian numbers almost irrelevant as long as the Greeks could maintain their position. However, on the third day, the tide of the battle turned due to a traitor named Ephialtes, who revealed to Xerxes a hidden path that bypassed Thermopylae. This path allowed the Persians to outflank the Greeks, surrounding them from both sides. Realizing the impending doom, Leonidas ordered most of the Greek forces to retreat, preserving their lives for the battles to come. He and his 300 Spartans, along with a few hundred other Greek soldiers who chose to stay, prepared for a final stand. Knowing their fate was sealed, the Spartans fought with unmatched ferocity, determined to sell their lives dearly and delay the Persians as long as possible. In the end, Leonidas and his men were overwhelmed, but not before inflicting massive casualties on the Persian forces. The final moments of the Spartans were a testament to their courage and loyalty to their land and people. Though they were ultimately defeated, their stand at Thermopylae had a profound impact. News of their bravery spread throughout Greece, inspiring other city-states to join the fight against Persia. The Battle of Thermopylae became a rallying cry, symbolizing resistance and unity in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. It galvanized the Greeks, who would later achieve a decisive victory over the Persians at the Battle of Salamis and eventually drive them out of Greece altogether. Thermopylae showed that courage and strategy could stand against even the greatest of empires, and it remains a powerful example of sacrifice for a greater cause. For generations, the story of the 300 Spartans and their allies has been told as a tale of heroism and dedication to freedom. The phrase "Mollen Labe," meaning "come and take," them, attributed to Leonidas when asked to surrender his weapons, has echoed through time as a testament to defiance and resilience. The Spartan stand at Thermopylae continues to resonate as one of history's greatest acts of courage and loyalty, a whispered legend from the ancient past. The Battle of Salamis, Greece's naval triumph over Persia. In the wake of the heroic stand at Thermopylae, the Greek city-states faced an even greater threat from the Persian Empire. With their land defenses breached, the Persians were advancing into central Greece, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. However, the Greeks had one last line of defense: their navy. The Battle of Salamis, fought in 480 BCE, would become one of the most pivotal naval battles in ancient history, demonstrating that strategy and courage could overcome sheer numbers and turning the tide in favor of the Greeks. Following the fall of Thermopylae, Xerxes and his forces marched southward, eventually reaching Athens. The Athenians, realizing they could not defend the city on land, made the difficult decision to evacuate. Citizens fled to the nearby island of Salamis while the Persian forces burned the city, a moment that underscored the desperate situation facing Greece. However, the Athenians and their allies were far from defeated. They rallied their naval forces under the command of Themistocles, a shrewd Athenian general with a keen understanding of naval warfare. The Greek navy, made up of around 300 ships, was significantly outnumbered by the Persian fleet, which reportedly had over 1,000 vessels. But Themistocles had a plan. He knew that the narrow straits of Salamis, located between the island and the mainland, could neutralize the Persian numerical advantage. If he could lure the Persian fleet into these confined waters, the Greek triremes, small and highly maneuverable warships, could use the limited space to their advantage. To set his plan in motion, Themistocles used a clever deception. He sent a message to Xerxes, pretending to be a traitor, and suggested that the Greeks were disorganized and planning to retreat. Xerxes, eager to crush the remaining Greek forces in one decisive blow, took the bait. He ordered his fleet to enter the narrow straits, where he believed he could corner and destroy the Greek navy. As dawn broke on the day of battle, the Persian fleet began to advance into the straits of Salamis. Themistocles, waiting for the right moment, ordered his triremes to charge. The Greeks, well prepared and familiar with the tight waters, launched a coordinated assault. The larger Persian ships, designed for open sea combat, struggled to maneuver in the narrow channels, causing collisions and chaos within their ranks. The smaller Greek triremes darted between them, ramming and disabling Persian vessels with brutal efficiency. The battle quickly turned into a devastating rout for the Persians. Many of their ships were destroyed or incapacitated, while others, attempting to retreat, became trapped in the straits. Persian sailors, unfamiliar with the terrain and panicked by the relentless Greek assault, were thrown into disarray. By the end of the day, a significant portion of the Persian fleet had been lost, while Greek losses remained comparatively minimal. The victory at Salamis was decisive and shattered the morale of the Persian navy. Xerxes, who had watched the battle from a hill overlooking the straits, was forced to acknowledge the defeat of his navy. Without control of the seas, he could no longer support his massive army in Greece. Fearing that his remaining forces might be cut off, Xerxes ordered a large portion of his army to retreat back to Persia, leaving behind a smaller contingent under the command of his general Mardonius. The threat of a Persian invasion had been averted, thanks to the Greeks' clever tactics and unyielding determination. The Battle of Salamis was more than just a military victory, it was a turning point in the Greco-Persian Wars. It demonstrated that unity and strategic thinking could overcome even the most formidable adversaries. Salamis became a symbol of Greek resilience, inspiring the city-states to continue their resistance against Persia. The following year, the Greeks would go on to win another crucial victory at the Battle of Plataea, effectively ending the Persian invasion. For the Greeks, the victory at Salamis validated their ideals of freedom and independence. It was a moment of triumph for Themistocles, whose cunning and foresight had saved his people from what seemed like certain destruction. The battle also solidified Athens' position as a naval power, setting the stage for its future dominance in the Aegean Sea and its emergence as a leader of the Greek world. The Battle of Salamis remains a legendary chapter in ancient history, a testament to the power of strategy, unity, and the will to defend one's home against overwhelming odds. The legacy of Salamis would echo through Greek culture, becoming a story of hope, resilience, and the enduring strength of a people determined to remain free. The Peloponnesian War, the prolonged struggle between Athens and Sparta. The Peloponnesian War was a brutal and protracted conflict that tore apart the Greek world, pitting two of the most powerful city-states, Athens and Sparta, against each other. Lasting from 431 to 404 BCE, this war was more than just a military conflict. It was a clash of ideologies, as democratic Athens and militaristic Sparta vied for dominance. The Peloponnesian War left an indelible mark on Greek history, ultimately leading to the downfall of Athens and the weakening of Greek unity. The origins of the conflict lay in the growing tension between Athens and Sparta after the Greco-Persian Wars. Athens emerged from those wars with immense influence, establishing the Delian League, an alliance of city-states under Athenian leadership. The League was initially formed to defend against future Persian threats, but over time it became a tool for Athenian imperial ambitions. Using its powerful navy, Athens exerted control over its allies, demanding tribute and expanding its influence throughout the Aegean Sea. Sparta, on the other hand, led the Peloponnesian League, an alliance of city-states that opposed Athenian dominance. Unlike Athens, Sparta had a rigid, militaristic society and focused on land-based power rather than naval strength. The two city-states had fundamentally different cultures and governing structures. Athens was a democracy that valued open debate and artistic achievement, while Sparta was an oligarchic society focused on discipline, simplicity, and martial prowess. As Athens continued to expand its influence, tensions mounted. The immediate spark for war came when Corinth, a powerful ally of Sparta, clashed with the Athenian-aligned city of Corcyra. When Athens intervened on behalf of Corcyra, Sparta saw it as an act of aggression and a direct threat to its allies. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict failed, and in 431 BCE, the Peloponnesian War officially began. The first phase of the war, known as the Archidamian War, was marked by a series of devastating sieges and raids. Sparta, under the leadership of King Archidamus, repeatedly invaded the Athenian countryside, destroying farms and attempting to cut off the city's food supply. In response, Athens, led by its influential statesman Pericles, employed a defensive strategy, retreating behind the city's walls and using its superior navy to raid the Peloponnesian coast. This strategy was effective at first, but Athens soon faced a crisis. In 430 BCE, a plague swept through the city, killing a significant portion of the population, including Pericles himself. The loss of life and leadership dealt a severe blow to Athens. Despite the hardships, the war continued. A temporary truce known as the Peace of Nicias was agreed upon in 421 BCE, but this peace was fragile and short-lived. The conflict reignited with the disastrous Sicilian expedition, a bold but ill-fated attempt by Athens to expand its influence by attacking the city of Syracuse in Sicily. The campaign ended in a catastrophic defeat, with the Athenian navy almost completely destroyed. This loss weakened Athens significantly, shifting the balance of power in favor of Sparta. As the war dragged on, Sparta sought assistance from Persia, a former enemy of the Greeks. In exchange for financial support, Sparta agreed to cede control of the Ionian cities to Persia, securing the funds needed to build a navy capable of challenging Athens at sea. Under the command of the Spartan general Lysander, this new fleet successfully defeated the Athenians in a series of naval battles. The final blow came at the Battle of Agaspotami in 405 BCE, where the Athenian navy was decisively defeated. With its navy destroyed, Athens was left vulnerable. Sparta laid siege to the city, cutting off supplies and forcing Athens to surrender in 404 BCE. The terms of surrender were harsh. Athens was forced to dismantle its walls, disband its empire, and limit its navy to a few ships. The once powerful city-state was reduced to a shadow of its former self, and Sparta emerged as the dominant power in Greece. However, the Peloponnesian War had a profound cost for all of Greece. The prolonged conflict left many city-states weakened, economically strained, and politically unstable. The war had pitted Greek against Greek, and the unity that had been achieved during the Persian Wars was shattered. In the years following the war, Greece would struggle with internal conflicts and political upheaval, leaving it vulnerable to external threats, most notably the rise of Macedon under Philip II. The Peloponnesian War was a tragic chapter in Greek history, a cautionary tale of how ambition, rivalry, and internal division can lead to destruction. Though Sparta had won the war, it too would soon face decline, unable to maintain the hegemony it had fought so hard to achieve. The Peloponnesian War left an enduring legacy, shaping the Greek world for centuries to come and serving as a stark reminder of the consequences of prolonged conflict and the fragile nature of power. The lessons of the Peloponnesian War echo through history, as the ideals of Athens and the discipline of Sparta continue to inspire, reminding us of a time when two great powers clashed and the entire Greek world was changed forever. The conquests of Alexander the Great, uniting the Greek world and expanding eastward. The story of Alexander the Great is one of unparalleled ambition, military genius, and the relentless drive to conquer the known world. Born in 356 BCE to King Philip II of Macedon and Queen Olympias, Alexander was raised in a culture that valued strength, honor, and glory in battle. Taught by the philosopher Aristotle, Alexander was instilled with a love for knowledge, culture, and the legendary heroes of ancient Greek lore. Little did anyone know, this young Macedonian prince would one day create one of the largest empires in history, stretching from Greece to the edges of India. Upon the assassination of his father in 336 BCE, Alexander ascended the throne of Macedon at the young age of 20. Philip had united much of Greece under Macedonian hegemony, but Alexander had grander visions. Almost immediately, he turned his attention to the Persian Empire, which spanned from Asia Minor to the borders of India. Persia was the superpower of the time, ruled by King Darius III, and conquering it would be an unprecedented achievement. Alexander saw himself as the new Achilles, a hero destined to lead a united Greece in a glorious conquest. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor with an army of around 40,000 men, beginning his campaign against Persia. His first major engagement was the Battle of Granicus, where he demonstrated his fearless leadership by personally charging into battle. The Greeks achieved a swift victory, setting the tone for Alexander's campaign and securing his foothold in Asia Minor. From there, he moved south, liberating Greek cities along the coast from Persian control and gaining their allegiance. The next major confrontation came at the Battle of Issus in 333 BCE, where Alexander faced King Darius III for the first time. Though heavily outnumbered, Alexander's strategic brilliance and the discipline of his troops led to a decisive victory. Darius fled, leaving behind his family and much of his wealth, a humiliation that only fueled Alexander's determination. This victory opened the path to the heart of the Persian Empire, but Alexander chose instead to secure the eastern Mediterranean coast, knowing it would cut off Persian naval support. One of the most significant moments of his campaign was the siege of Tyre, a fortified island city. Tyre refused to surrender, forcing Alexander into a grueling 7-month siege. He built a causeway to the island, an engineering feat that eventually allowed his army to breach Tyre's defenses. Tyre's fall sent a clear message to the rest of the region: resistance was futile. From there, Alexander moved into Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator. He founded the city of Alexandria, which would later become a center of learning and culture in the ancient world. In 331 BCE, Alexander met Darius for a final showdown at the Battle of Gaugamela. Despite Darius's massive army, which included war elephants and scythe chariots, Alexander's tactical acumen prevailed. By exploiting weaknesses in the Persian formation, Alexander achieved a stunning victory. Darius fled once more, and Alexander was declared the king of Asia. After Gaugamela, the Persian Empire effectively collapsed, and Alexander entered Babylon as a conqueror, greeted as a liberator by many of its citizens. But Alexander's ambition was insatiable. He pushed further east, pursuing Darius until the Persian king was assassinated by his own men. Alexander claimed the title of Persian king, but he was not yet finished. He led his army through the mountains of Central Asia, founding cities and defeating local tribes as he went. His conquests reached their furthest point in India, where he faced King Porus at the Battle of the Hydaspes. This was one of Alexander's toughest battles, as Porus's war elephants and resilient soldiers posed a formidable challenge. However, Alexander's strategy once again secured victory, though the battle took a heavy toll on his men. By this point, Alexander's army was exhausted. They had marched thousands of miles, enduring harsh conditions and countless battles. When Alexander proposed further conquests, his troops, loyal as they were, refused to go on. Reluctantly, Alexander agreed to turn back. On the journey home, he led his men through the Gedrosian Desert, a perilous route that claimed many lives due to the extreme heat and lack of water. Despite the hardships, Alexander returned to Babylon in 323 BCE, where he began plans to consolidate and govern his vast empire. However, his dreams of further conquest were cut short. In June of 323 BCE, at the age of 32, Alexander fell ill and died under mysterious circumstances. Some say it was malaria or typhoid fever, others suspect he may have been poisoned. His sudden death left his empire without a clear successor, as he had no legitimate heir. His generals, known as the Diadochi, eventually divided the empire among themselves, marking the beginning of the Hellenistic period, where Greek culture and influence spread across the ancient world. Alexander's legacy endures to this day. His conquests brought about a fusion of Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian cultures, creating a rich blend that influenced art, philosophy, science, and government for centuries. Cities he founded, such as Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of learning and culture. His vision of a unified empire, while short-lived, left an indelible mark on history. The story of Alexander the Great is a testament to the power of ambition, strategy, and sheer determination. His journey reshaped the ancient world, leaving a legacy that would inspire countless leaders and conquerors for generations to come. Alexander's conquests were more than military victories. They were a cultural revolution that brought together the East and West, forever altering the course of history. The Battle of Cannae, Hannibal's masterpiece against Rome. The Battle of Cannae, fought in 216 BCE, is often regarded as one of the most brilliant military maneuvers in history and a testament to Hannibal Barca's genius as a strategist. This battle, part of the Second Punic War, saw Hannibal's Carthaginian forces decisively defeat a far larger Roman army. The battle's outcome was a devastating blow to Rome, demonstrating the vulnerability of even the most powerful armies when faced with innovative tactics and unyielding determination. After crossing the Alps and arriving in Italy, Hannibal had already won several key battles against the Romans. However, his ultimate aim was to dismantle Rome's dominance in Italy by fostering rebellion among Rome's allies. In response, the Roman Senate decided to confront Hannibal with overwhelming force. They mobilized an army of nearly 80,000 men, led by the consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. Confident in their numbers, the Romans sought a decisive battle that would crush Hannibal's army once and for all. Hannibal, with an army of around 50,000, knew he was outnumbered, but he also recognized that the Roman strategy was predictable. Instead of facing Rome's superior numbers head-on, Hannibal devised a strategy that would exploit their overconfidence. His plan was to draw the Romans into the center of his formation, then envelop them from the sides in a classic double envelopment maneuver, a tactic that would later be studied and revered by military leaders throughout history. On the day of the battle, Hannibal positioned his troops with Gaulish and Iberian soldiers at the center, flanked by his more disciplined African infantry on both sides. His cavalry, commanded by his brother Hasdrubal, held the wings, ready to engage the Roman cavalry. Hannibal deliberately weakened the center of his line, intending to let it fall back slowly and create the illusion that the Romans were breaking through. Meanwhile, his flanks remained strong and prepared to close in on the advancing Roman forces. As the battle commenced, the Romans charged forward, their large numbers pushing into Hannibal's center. The Carthaginian center began to give way, as planned, drawing the Roman soldiers deeper into the formation. With the Romans now fully committed, Hannibal signaled his African infantry to move inward from the flanks surrounding the Roman legions. Simultaneously, Hasdrubal's cavalry defeated the Roman cavalry and joined the assault from the rear, completely encircling the Roman army. The Romans, now trapped in a dense formation, were unable to maneuver. Panic and chaos ensued as Hannibal's forces systematically decimated the Roman legions. The slaughter was relentless and brutal. It's estimated that up to 70,000 Roman soldiers were killed in a single day, making it one of the bloodiest battles in history. The Carthaginian losses were comparatively light, solidifying Cannae as one of the most lopsided victories in ancient warfare. The impact of Cannae on Rome was profound. The defeat sent shockwaves through the Roman Republic, as nearly 1/5 of Rome's male population of military age had been lost. Rome went into a state of mourning, and many of its allies began to question their loyalty. Hannibal's victory had the potential to topple Rome, yet he faced a significant challenge. Despite his victories, he lacked the resources and reinforcements needed to besiege and capture the city itself. Rome, however, demonstrated remarkable resilience. Rather than capitulate, the Romans adopted a new strategy known as the Fabian strategy, named after the Roman general Fabius Maximus. Rather than confronting Hannibal directly, Rome decided to avoid large battles and instead engage in a war of attrition. They harassed Hannibal's supply lines, attacked his allies, and waited for his forces to weaken over time. This cautious approach allowed Rome to rebuild its army and prevent Hannibal from achieving any further decisive victories. Though Cannae was a high point for Hannibal, it marked the beginning of a long, grinding stalemate. Hannibal remained in Italy for years, but without additional reinforcements from Carthage, he could not capitalize on his victories. Rome gradually regained control over its allies and wore down Hannibal's forces. The legacy of Cannae endures as a masterclass in military strategy. Hannibal's use of the double envelopment is still studied in military academies around the world as an example of tactical brilliance and the power of unconventional warfare. For the Romans, the defeat at Cannae was a painful lesson, but one that ultimately strengthened their resolve. They learned the value of adaptability and patience, qualities that would serve them well as they continued their expansion and eventually achieved dominance over the Mediterranean. Hannibal's victory at Cannae was a turning point in the Punic Wars and a testament to his skill as a commander. While he would ultimately be forced to withdraw from Italy and face defeat, his tactics and the psychological impact of his campaigns left a lasting mark on Rome and the history of warfare. The Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander the Great's decisive victory over Persia. The Battle of Gaugamela, fought in 331 BCE, marked the climax of Alexander the Great's campaign against the Persian Empire and led to the downfall of King Darius III. Often referred to as Alexander's greatest victory, Gaugamela was a battle that demonstrated his unmatched tactical genius, the resilience of his army, and the relentless drive that fueled his desire to conquer the known world. This battle would ultimately open the path for Alexander to claim the title of King of Asia and change the course of ancient history. By 331 BCE, Alexander had already achieved several major victories over the Persian Empire, including the Battle of Issus, and had gained control of much of the eastern Mediterranean. King Darius III, determined to defend his empire, gathered an enormous army reportedly numbering between 100,000 and 250,000 soldiers. Darius chose Gaugamela, a vast open plain near modern-day Iraq, as the battlefield, believing that its size would allow him to fully utilize his superior numbers, including chariots and war elephants, which were thought to give the Persians an insurmountable advantage. Alexander, however, was undeterred. With an army of about 47,000, much smaller than Darius's force, he knew that his only hope of victory lay in exploiting Persian weaknesses and using superior tactics. Alexander's troops were battle-hardened and loyal, and he had a reputation for leading from the front, inspiring his men with his courage and strategic vision. He understood that he could not allow himself to be encircled by the Persians, so he crafted a plan that would outmaneuver and outthink Darius. As the two armies faced each other on the plains of Gaugamela, Darius positioned his forces with a strong center, flanked by chariots and cavalry on either side. The Persian line extended far beyond the length of Alexander's forces, posing a real risk of encirclement. However, Alexander had carefully studied the terrain and Persian tactics. He deployed his troops in a formation designed to stretch the Persian lines thin. His own line was angled, with his right flank extended forward to draw the Persian left away from the center. At dawn, Alexander initiated the battle by advancing slowly, forcing Darius to order his forces forward to engage. As the Persians advanced, Alexander ordered his cavalry on the right to shift further out, drawing the Persian left even further away from the center and creating a gap in the Persian line. At this critical moment, Alexander led a charge with his elite companion cavalry directly toward the opening in the Persian ranks, aiming for Darius himself. The Persian chariots, meant to be a formidable asset, were largely ineffective as the well-trained Greek soldiers deftly maneuvered to avoid them, while Darius's front lines began to falter under the relentless Greek assault. As Alexander's forces pressed into the gap, chaos erupted within the Persian ranks. Darius, seeing the threat approaching and fearing for his life, abandoned the battlefield and fled, just as he had at Issus. His departure caused panic among his troops, many of whom began to retreat. Alexander's forces continued their assault, pushing deeper into the Persian ranks, while the Macedonian left flank, under the command of General Parmenion, held back the Persian attacks on the other side. Though tempted to pursue Darius, Alexander turned his focus back to the battlefield to ensure a complete victory and support his left flank, which was under heavy pressure. Once he returned to Parmenion's aid, the Persian army's cohesion shattered. With their king in flight and Alexander's forces bearing down on them, the remaining Persian soldiers broke ranks and scattered. The battle ended in a decisive victory for Alexander, solidifying his control over the Persian heartland and effectively ending Darius's reign. The Battle of Gaugamela was a turning point, as it marked the collapse of the Achaemenid Empire and Alexander's ascent as the ruler of the vast Persian territories. In the aftermath, Alexander pursued Darius, who fled eastward but was eventually betrayed and killed by his own satraps. With Darius's death, Alexander declared himself king of Asia, continuing his journey of conquest further eastward into Central Asia and eventually into India. The significance of Gaugamela extended far beyond the battlefield. This victory enabled Alexander to establish his empire across 3 continents, blending Greek and Persian cultures and leaving a legacy that would endure for centuries. The battle is often studied for its demonstration of tactical ingenuity, particularly Alexander's use of battlefield maneuvers to offset numerical disadvantage and his ability to adapt to his enemy's strengths. Alexander's victory at Gaugamela is remembered as the pinnacle of his military career, symbolizing his genius as a leader and his vision of a unified world under his rule. It was a testament to the power of strategy, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a leader and his men. The plains of Gaugamela bore witness to the moment that Alexander truly earned the title the Great, a conqueror who changed the face of the ancient world forever. The Battle of Actium, the fall of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, and the rise of the Roman Empire. The Battle of Actium, fought on September 2, 31 BCE, was a decisive naval confrontation that marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. This battle saw the forces of Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, clash with the combined forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Actium would forever change the course of Roman history, securing Octavian's position as the sole ruler of Rome and leading to the fall of 2 of the most famous lovers in history, Antony and Cleopatra. The roots of the conflict lay in the complicated political dynamics following Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE. Caesar's death left a power vacuum in Rome, sparking a struggle between his supporters and those who opposed his growing influence. Mark Antony, a loyal general and friend of Caesar, initially aligned with Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, and Lepidus, forming the Second Triumvirate. Together, they defeated Caesar's assassins, but the alliance soon crumbled under the weight of ambition and rivalry. By 37 BCE, tensions between Octavian and Antony had escalated. Antony had journeyed to the east, where he allied himself with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. Their romantic and political partnership became the talk of Rome, with rumors circulating about Antony's intentions. Many Romans saw Cleopatra as a dangerous foreign influence, and Octavian used this perception to his advantage, portraying Antony as a traitor to Rome who had fallen under the spell of a foreign queen. In 32 BCE, Octavian declared war, not directly against Antony, but against Cleopatra, framing it as a patriotic crusade to save Rome from Eastern corruption. The stage was set for a final showdown at Actium, a narrow gulf off the western coast of Greece. Antony and Cleopatra commanded a large fleet of approximately 500 ships, many of which were heavily fortified with soldiers and armed with powerful weapons. Octavian's fleet, under the command of his trusted general Agrippa, was smaller but faster and more maneuverable. Agrippa's strategic planning would prove critical to the outcome of the battle. On the day of the battle, Antony's forces were positioned in a defensive formation, anticipating a direct assault. However, Agrippa employed a strategy that disrupted Antony's plans. He used his lighter, faster ships to harass the edges of Antony's fleet, forcing them to stretch their lines and creating gaps. Octavian's forces then targeted Antony's supply lines and gradually weakened his defenses. As the battle wore on, Cleopatra's ships, positioned at the rear of the fleet, suddenly broke away and sailed through an opening in the battle line, retreating towards Egypt. Seeing Cleopatra's departure, Antony abandoned his troops and followed her, leaving his fleet leaderless and demoralized. This decision proved disastrous. Without their commanders, Antony's remaining forces lost hope and surrendered or were destroyed by Octavian's forces. The victory at Actium was decisive for Octavian. With Antony and Cleopatra defeated, he pursued them to Alexandria, where both would eventually take their own lives rather than face capture. Antony, heartbroken and betrayed, fell on his sword, while Cleopatra famously arranged for a deadly asp to bite her, ending her life in a final act of defiance. Their deaths symbolized the end of an era, the last chapter of Ptolemaic Egypt and the final resistance to Octavian's ambition. With Antony and Cleopatra gone, Octavian returned to Rome as its undisputed ruler. In 27 BCE, he was granted the title of Augustus, becoming the first Roman emperor and marking the official beginning of the Roman Empire. The Republic, which had governed Rome for centuries, was replaced by an autocratic system with Augustus at its helm. His reign ushered in a period of stability and prosperity known as the Pax Romana, a time of peace and expansion that would last for nearly 2 centuries. The Battle of Actium remains one of the most significant moments in Roman history. It not only determined the fate of Antony and Cleopatra, but also paved the way for a new political order. Actium marked the end of the civil wars that had plagued Rome and established Augustus as a leader who would shape the empire's future. This battle has continued to captivate historians, symbolizing the triumph of political cunning and military strategy over romance and ambition. Actium's legacy endures as a turning point in the ancient world, a moment when the Roman Empire was born from the ashes of the Republic, forever changing the course of history. The Siege of Masada, the last stand of Jewish rebels against Rome. The Siege of Masada, which took place between 73 and 74 CE, was the final confrontation of the First Jewish-Roman War and a symbolic last stand against Roman rule. Perched high on a mountain in the Judean desert, Masada was a fortress held by Jewish zealots who had resisted Rome's control for years. This siege has come to represent resilience, courage, and the tragic choice of death over enslavement. The conflict's origins lay in the growing resentment among Jewish communities toward Roman occupation and heavy taxation. In 66 CE, this tension erupted into open revolt in Jerusalem and surrounding areas, leading to the First Jewish-Roman War. The uprising initially saw some successes, but the might of the Roman Empire eventually overpowered the Jewish rebels. In 70 CE, after a brutal siege, Roman forces captured Jerusalem, destroying the Second Temple, a devastating blow to the Jewish people. Many rebels either surrendered or fled, but a determined group, led by Eleazar ben Yair, retreated to Masada. Masada was originally built by Herod the Great as a palace fortress and was renowned for its strategic location. Positioned on a steep plateau overlooking the Dead Sea, Masada was almost impregnable, with steep cliffs on all sides. The fortress was stocked with ample food, water, and weaponry, providing a safe haven for about 960 Jewish zealots, including women and children. For the Romans, Masada was a challenge that needed to be overcome, as it represented the last pocket of organized resistance in Judea. In 72 CE, the Roman governor of Judea, Lucius Flavius Silva, arrived with the 10th Legion, a formidable force of approximately 15,000 soldiers, including support staff and auxiliary forces. Despite Masada's natural defenses, Silva was determined to capture it. He set up camps around the fortress, encircling it to prevent any escape. The Roman forces began constructing a massive ramp on the western side of the mountain, a monumental engineering feat. Over the course of several months. Roman soldiers, along with enslaved Jewish laborers, built the ramp, using earth, stones, and wooden supports, inching closer to the fortress with each passing day. Inside Masada, the defenders watched as the Romans advanced, knowing that their time was limited. Led by Eleazar ben Yair, the zealots prepared themselves for a final stand, where that capture would mean torture, slavery, or death. As the Roman siege ramp neared completion, the defenders braced themselves for the inevitable assault. The Roman forces, equipped with battering rams and siege towers, reached the fortress walls in the spring of 73 CE. After breaching the outer wall, they prepared to launch a final attack. Realizing that defeat was imminent, Eleazar gathered the defenders and delivered a speech urging them to choose death over enslavement. He argued that it was better to die free than to live as slaves under Roman rule. According to the historian Josephus, the defenders agreed to his plan. They set fire to their belongings and took the lives of their families before turning their weapons on each other. The men selected 10 individuals to carry out the killings, and one last person was chosen to end the lives of the remaining 9 before taking his own. When the Romans entered the fortress the next morning, they found only silence and ashes, a haunting scene that conveyed the zealots' final act of defiance. The siege of Masada marked the end of the First Jewish-Roman War, but its legacy endured. For Rome, the victory was another step in consolidating its control over the empire. For the Jewish people, however, Masada became a powerful symbol of resistance and the enduring spirit of their ancestors. The story of Masada was largely forgotten until it was rediscovered in the modern era, where it has become a symbol of resilience and the struggle for freedom. Today, Masada stands as a historic site and a testament to the determination and courage of those who chose death over surrender, a story that echoes through history as a reminder of the human desire for freedom even in the face of impossible odds. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the wars of the ancient world. I hope these stories have taken you back in time, whispering tales of heroism, strategy, and epic battles that shaped history. If you enjoyed this journey and would like to hear more, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like the video. Until next time, let's keep wandering through the mysteries of history, letting these whispered stories bring the past to life. Thank you for listening.